Hey friends, welcome to week one of our amazing new small group, What is God Doing? I am each week going to share with you the big idea from this week's message, and I hope that you will gather with your groups and reflect on this big idea and even use our discussion questions to tee up a great conversation about the series, about what God is saying to you through it, and that you would just enjoy spending time together in however your group is meeting in a socially distant, acceptable way. Definitely want you to stay safe. But listen, this is week one. And in week one, we deal with this concept, why God? You know, a lot of times when we go through difficulties, that's what we say. Why, God? Like, why am I going through this? And even in the midst of this COVID pandemic, when we recognize that over 40 million people have filed for unemployment, over 100,000 people have died to this dreaded virus. And even in the midst of all of that, we've got the protests, we've got another unjust murder of George Floyd and all of the fallout and the racial division in our country. It sometimes will make you say, why, God? Like, have we done anything wrong? Are you punishing us? And that's where we really enter into the story of Job. Because when you study the background about who Job was, you recognize that he was a good man. He was doing good things. He cared for his family. But it seems like what he went through was unjust. It seems like when you look at his story and then you see this conversation between Satan and God literally offers Job up on the surface. You say, well, what in the world? What is that about? But in truth, it wasn't a punishment. It was actually a promotion. One of the things that I talk about in week one's message is how the book of Job, according to Bible history, is actually the oldest book. It's the first book that's ever written as it relates to biblical history. And I think that's really significant because I think there is a foundational truth that God is trying to teach us through this book. And that foundational truth is, can we, like Job, remain faithful even in the midst of difficulty? See, the same trick that the enemy played against Eve, he attempts to play with God. What the enemy does with Eve is he convinces her to think the worst about God. God is holding something from you. That's why he didn't want you to eat from this fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And God is then confronted with Satan, and he tries to do the same thing with God. But God's response is the exact opposite of Eve's. Eve thinks the worst of God, but God thinks the best of us. So Satan attempts to say, well, if you take everything, if you allow them to lose their job, if you allow them to be afflicted with challenges and issues, that they, meaning Job, that they won't worship you. They won't stay focused and committed to you. But God thinks the best of us. He says, no, you're wrong, Satan. And so he actually offers Job to the enemy as a way of promoting Job, as saying, I know how faithful Job will be. I believe the best in him. And the question is, can God say the same about you? Can God trust you with trouble? Can God allow difficulties in your life knowing that you will remain faithful? So listen, have great discussion in your groups, but that's the big idea for this week. It's easy to say, why God? But now you understand. It's not a punishment. It's not punitive. It's a promotion. I hope you have robust discussion in your groups, and I can't wait to see you on next week for week two. Take care.